Today, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug alongside of heroin. I've introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act.
That was Bernie Sanders earlier today at a rally in New York City talking marijuana legalization after the DEA announced this week it will reconsider categorizing marijuana under federal law in the coming months. Currently categorized as a Schedule I drug, the U.S. government defines marijuana as one of the most dangerous drugs with no accepted medical use, along with drugs such as heroin and LSD. Joining me now to discuss is Hillary Bricken, lead attorney at Canna Law Group. Hillary, thank you very much for joining us from out west. First of all, what would be the implications or benefits of bumping marijuana down to, let's say, a Schedule II or a Schedule III category?
Well, I think it depends on the perspective of how you look at it. From a government regulatory perspective, the impact would be basically easing barriers to be able to research marijuana more, and then on a consumer level, probably mitigating or eliminating those criminal penalties that come along with marijuana consumption and possession. Certainly, though, on some level, depending on what the DEA actually decides to do, we could end up in a whole new world where doctors are actually lawfully prescribing cannabis, and cannabis is getting to market through the FDA drug trials process. So it really depends on where you stand in the spectrum as to what the impact is going to be overall if the DEA does reclassify or reschedule.
So speaking of spectrum, let's talk a little bit about politics and the presidential candidates and where they stand on this issue. Bernie Sanders, for example, has introduced a Senate bill that would strike marijuana from the criminal code, effectively leaving the decision of whether to legalize and regulate cannabis up to the individual states. Hillary Clinton, for her part, has called for easing restrictions, pledging if elected president she would do what the DEA is proposing and reclassify it as a Schedule II substance. Obviously, young voters key in this. Are you seeing any evidence the fight to legalize marijuana is moving the needle for voters this election year one way or the other?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's moving the needle. I think it's one topic among many that really profiles a candidate and how they stand with younger voters. It is certainly a hot topic. I'm not sure it's going to be the linchpin of a vote, but if you look at a Hillary Clinton, certainly we're going to see more research into the topic. Legalization is going to be on a slower pace with the federal government. With a Bernie Sanders type, all-out legalization is totally possible, or deferring to states' rights. If we get a Donald Trump type in the White House, I think we can imagine a world where there's a total retraction of what's happened with the states, and it's very much going to slow the progress of marijuana legalization. But I'm not necessarily convinced that it's a huge topic to sway voters one way or the other.
All right, and let me get your take on it from the perspective of the Republican side, which is, you know, some of the candidates saying that they would roll back either some of the gains made to try to legalize marijuana, in some cases deferring to the states. Is there a real concern that a Republican president would roll back all the advancements made towards legalization for medical and recreational use of marijuana?
I would say most definitely, because when we talk about the Department of Justice and enforcing the law, they are supposed to be independent and exercise prosecutorial discretion, but they ultimately have to check in with the president, who is the head of the executive, obviously, and that one individual can create a party line or an agenda whereby we will roll back this experiment where states are supposed to be these democracies, these laboratories of democracies for these very experiments like we've done with cannabis and other things in the past. And I think it does matter who the president is when it comes to how the Department of Justice will continue to enforce federal drug laws pertaining to cannabis.
All right, Hillary Bricken live for us in Seattle. Thank you very much for joining us this Saturday afternoon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.